And Legionnaires, it was a reminder, not just to the family and friends of Corporal Frank Buckles, but to the veterans and families of every generation. No matter when you serve, no matter how many years ago that you took off your uniform, no matter how long you live as a proud veteran of this country we love, America will never leave your side. America will never forget.
On March 6, 2008, America's last World War I veteran, Frank Buckles, visited the D.C. War Memorial on the National Mall. He was accompanied by his daughter, Susanna, close family friend David DeYoung, and a few others. It was the first trip to the memorial for all of them. They immediately noticed something was wrong.
To the left, under some trees, behind a toilet, was a little, you could just see a bit of this little marble monument. There was a broken walkway, broken cement walkway leading up to it, and it was rather difficult to get the wheelchair up that walkway. Luckily, we had some escorts with us who could actually kind of raise the wheelchair on either side a little bit to get it over the rough spots.
Trees had overgrown and almost completely buried it from sight. The once pristine white marble columns were now dirty and stained. There were no signs directing people to it, or even to let them know what it was. The streetlights that once lined the walkways were long since taken down. And it wasn't until Frank made it to the base of the memorial that he realized that this memorial was for the residents of D.C. only.
It seems that that little broken building, if it were to just be clarified, so that it could be an educational remembrance for everyone, for all of us, to remember the glory things and also the sad things, and hopefully the ultimate result is learning the lessons of history.
At the request of Frank Buckles, David DeYoung, along with Edwin Fountain and many others, stepped up to help bring this project into the spotlight. The World War I Memorial Foundation was formed, and senators and congressmen from all over the country offered their support.
Here, not far from the Capitol, down on what we call the Mall, where we have the important memorials to America's past, we have built, as a nation, memorials to 3 of the great wars of the last century. But there is no memorial for those who served in the first great war of the last century, and that's the World War I Memorial.
The First World War is not well understood or remembered in the United States. There is no big memorial on the National Mall. Yet during 18 months of fighting, we suffered more deaths, over 116,000, than in Korea, Vietnam, Iraq, and Afghanistan combined.
I was just outraged. It's like, this is the best America can do for the people that sludged in the mud and were gassed and suffered horrible deaths and were maimed and dismembered and served not only their nation but the world and sacrificed so diligently. This is the best we can do in the United States of America, the pinnacle of the world's success stories. And here we are with the last World War I veteran from that entire generation. It was just an outrage.
It's a very important effort that Senator Thune, Senator Webb, myself, and others are making here, so-called Frank Buckles World War I Memorial Act, in terms of our fighting soldiers and our great moments in history and they're great patriots. This is the center, and this is where they deserve to be honored.
We noticed this a couple years ago and thought, what a disgrace. Here's a monument for the war to end all wars, and it looks like this is a monument to end all monuments. It's really unbelievable that it's in this shape that it's in.
What do you think about where a National World War I memorial should be?
Where?
Yeah.
I would think Washington, D.C.
We were just walking by and saw it, and this is my 6th year I've been here, and I never knew it was here.
But make no mistake about it, this is a memorial for those from Washington, D.C. But we don't have a memorial on the mall for those that served from all over the United States.
At least they could do is put some signs or some walkways up to it so people know it's here. People don't even have a clue it's here.
And where do you think that the memorial should be located in our country?
Probably, I'd say D.C.
D.C.?
And we need to honor them by fixing this thing up. I mean, it's too bad it's on a side street in the middle of the woods.
Yeah.
And like I say, if you are old and hard to walk, it's pretty tough. 2 years ago, we pushed a guy in a wheelchair down here, and we had a heck of a time pushing a guy around it. You know, it's too bad because it's a beautiful monument, and it could be really special. And it is something special. Just got to get people to see it. And I don't know what it's going to take to actually do it.
They've earned it. It's been a long time coming. They've got it for the WW2 veterans, the Korean, Vietnam, so they need something for the World War I veterans.
I wasn't sure what it was at first. Then I found out that it was the World War I monument, but it was only to the residents of D.C. It was poorly maintained. It was unfortunate. It almost seems like lesser than the other ones.
Well, I think it was a very nice idea. I can read here that it was started to include the names of those who were local, but I hope they'll have something of national importance.
At 108 years old, Frank Buckles did not give up, and in late 2010, the restoration began.
Without having any work to be done, except for residual. The columns are intact. You don't want to.
The memorial's rededication took place on November 10th, 2011. It was a fitting date, as it was on the eve of the anniversary of the end of World War I, some 93 years earlier. Of the 116,000 U.S. soldiers who died during World War I, the D.C. War Memorial continues to honor the 499 of those who called D.C. their home and served their nation during the war.
When I first visited the abandoned memorial in Washington, D.C. to World War I was surprised, as Frank Buckles was, that it was just a local memorial. And all we've ever talked about was placing a few sculptures or something yet to be approved in that vicinity, in that woods. There's nothing there. There's a horse stable for the National Park Service and an old rundown bathroom. Opposition has been raised by a few residents in Washington, D.C., saying that this would take away from their memorial, it would take away from the uniqueness of it.
And so today, we in the District of Columbia intend to make sure that this memorial remains dedicated solely to those veterans of the District of Columbia.
I think the most important thing I did was to oppose and continue to oppose any efforts to take this memorial away from those who had honored.
Away if you were to add a doughboy statue off in the woods here and say DC and national.
Well, because we have national World War I memorials. This is the only memorial to voteless Americans.
We don't have national World War I memorials.
And one of the things we've been emphatic about from ground zero was that nothing would do or be done to the DC memorial to take away from that uniqueness.
Do you think that they would object to symbolizing to the entire nation the most foot trafficked location in Washington, D.C.? You think they would object to placing a couple of sculptures off in the woods looking on to this memorial to elevate their status as American citizens?
Yes, when you've changed the name of their
If it
local
doesn't change,
memorial. It changes the name.
We just had simple plans. We just wanted to honor Americans. Just simple plans. And it became way more complex than I could do. It's way more complex than us on the board can do, and we look forward to having hope that in Washington, D.C. on the National Mall, someday, maybe before the centennial of World War I, those Americans will be honored and Frank Buckles' desire will be fulfilled.